This guy, please don't tell me that enough time passed from the time in which they were not able to be held liable for these charges so that when they came back, they were actually old enough to be held liable for these charges. That's going to make me so upset, bro. Like, you're telling me people were pronouncing y'all dead? Y'all had to survive by the skin of your teeth for a whole year and a half? And then you get back and the first thing you get hit with is a lawsuit and you get arrested, bro? Come on, man. That's tough. Boom! Hey, yo, what's up? We got another video today. And today, look what we're watching. How shipwrecked teens built their own city on an abandoned island. It's by Young Man Brew, who is new to the channel because we haven't seen his content. Yeah, I know that was almost a bar, but it wasn't, so sorry. But that's gonna be the video that we're gonna be watching today. So without further ado, let's hop into it. We got some good food. We got a bit of a switch up today. It is Wednesday, so you know what we got, but we got a bit of a switch up. So let's get into it. Go ahead and like the video, comment, subscribe, and let's get it.
Sponsored by NordVPN.
Wow.
After finally breaking free of their quiet home island, expecting smooth sailing all the way to a tropical paradise, teenage castaways instead found themselves adrift for 8 days with no land in sight, rationing what little they had, pitted in a fight against nature itself. This is the story of 6 young boys who not only survived, but thrived on an uninhabited island for 15 months with nothing but their bare hands and friendships that could weather any tropical storm.
Hey, that's kind of how you got to do it nowadays in America.
Of the Flies.
This is like America, low-key. You just got your boys. And y'all just got to do what you got to do to survive.
I don't know how
that was me and the homies at Riverside Pizza.
If my hometown was an island
making
$7.25
an hour,
I might want to take a vacation too. 1965.
But we had each other.
The quiet island of Ha'afeva on the Tongan archipelago in the center of the Pacific Ocean. The boys attended St. Andrew's College, a boarding school, and felt more confined than ever. For teenage friends, Sione, Stephen, Kolo, David, Luke, and Mano,
Yo, Kolo, they got some hard names.
Far more interesting than fluency. Mano, who was 15 and one of the eldest, was asked if he wanted to go to Fiji. He said yes, and that was all they needed to begin preparations.
That was it, bro.
Didn't really
they just
care
pulled up
where
to Fiji,
went.
bro.
They just wanted to see the world. The escape was soon drafted, but they still had one major problem. None of them had a boat. The 6 of them were resourceful, however, and they weren't going to let a little thing like personal ownership stop them. So they scoped out the sailboat of a local fisherman they all hated, Tanila Uhila. Snatching the sailboat in a particularly diabolical lick, the boys now had transport.
Particularly diabolical lick.
Was supplies. The boys set out to collect what they needed, namely 2 sacks of bananas, a few coconuts, and a small gas stove. They didn't think of bringing a compass, not even a map.
Y'all didn't even bring a map, dog?
Exactly how
y'all going seafaring, bro.
We can look at the distance between the
seafaring,
island of
bro. At least bring
the largest island in Tonga,
a log
and
post.
Fiji, a distance of over 750 kilometers, or if you speak American, 450 miles. Point being, it's a heck of a long boat ride. I don't know the last time you tried to navigate across an ocean, but to be honest, even with a map and compass, the ocean is still a vast expanse containing creatures the likes of which none of us have ever seen. Literally my worst nightmare. The boys began their journey one hot evening in June. The weather was good, only a mild breeze to carry them over the horizon. The sea remained calm, but this is when the boys made their next mistake. As the night grew longer, the boys grew tired. And eventually, they all fell asleep.
Bro, y'all gotta have someone waking up and shit.
Before a storm
y'all gotta manage this. Y'all should know this.
Them tumbling across the deck. They tried to hoist the sail and regain control of the boat, but the winds were too strong. Their sail was almost instantly torn and flew away.
I'm not gonna lie, their names kind of sounded like they were Maori or something. I feel like they should know. Maybe this is like, maybe this is a terrible prejudice example right here. This could be terrible. I could get canceled for this, but still, Given the circumstances, I don't know where they're from, but given the circumstances, it kind of sounded like their names meant they could have been Maori. And if they are, I feel like they should definitely have better experience in seafaring ventures, or at least better knowledge than the average person, at least. It was kind of crazy that they didn't, but I could be tripping.
In the intense turbulence. As they tried to keep their vessel afloat, a sickening crack echoed through the hull. For a moment,
crack? Oh,
it
no.
felt like they had been breached, sending
Oh,
fears that they
no.
were taking on water,
No.
shooting through the six boys' minds.
No.
But the truth was no better. They weren't taking on water, but their rudder had broken. So, while they weren't going to sink into the sea, at least not immediately,
Their
they
rudder
had
broke?
no way to steer, nor propel
Bro.
themselves to shore in the meantime. All there was
Nah,
left
that's
to
dead.
do was ration any
Let's
supplies
float.
they had and wait.
That's so
8
dead,
days,
bruh.
they drifted at sea.
8 days,
with no
bruh.
sign of land and no
Y'all
food,
survived this, y'all
water.
are lucky.
Things looked dire for the 6 lads.
Y'all
First,
survived
they
this, y'all
tried
are
to catch
lucky.
fish, but to no avail. Prudently, they used the coconuts they brought
no
with
avail?
them and tins they found on board to catch rainwater, and rationed it strictly,
Okay.
giving each boy exactly 1 sip of water in the morning and another sip in the evening.
Okay.
Some of the boys began to cry, but there was nothing they could do. In Mano's words, "We tried to keep our hopes up, but I was worried we might die." Then,
That's a
on the
valid
8th
worry.
day, a miracle appeared on the horizon
On the 8th
in
day
the
he
form
rose?
of a lumbering hunk of craggy rock, sticking
Let's
out
go.
1,000 feet above the ocean.
Crag rock.
This island is still considered uninhabitable to this day, but to them,
Uninhabitable?
it was their salvation. This is the island of Ata. Ata
Hmm.
was inhabited by the boys' Tongan ancestors at one point, but due to the trickery
Their
of some
ancestors?
Peruvian forced labor organizers
Oh, are they
in
from
the
Peru?
1860s, half the island's population was abducted and sold to Peruvian labor camps to
Oh, never
harvest
mind.
guano. Around 130
Probably
men
not
and
from
women
Peru if
were
they're, like,
taken
selling
from a
them.
population of only around 350. The island would remain uninhabited until the arrival of 6
So they're
lucky
probably
or
somewhere in
unlucky
South America,
young
right?
Tongans roughly 100 years later. Around 9 in the morning, the boys spotted the island. It was
What is
still
a
far in
Tongan?
the distance.
Where are they
not
from?
much
Where
more than
is
a speck.
Tongan from?
As the day
Or
grew before
Tongs?
them, the wind carried
Where are
them
they from?
closer and closer. Around 11 p.m., they arrived at a short distance from the shore. Mano then said a prayer with the boys before turning to them and saying,
Mano
"Don't
said,
get
"Hey."
out of the boat until I find out what's there."
Well, regardless, I'd rather take my chances out there than spend the rest of my life talking to a basketball. Franklin! Franklin! Franklin!
Is this from a movie or
Oh,
something?
God, no!
Is that a
Looks
reference
like
to
it's
a
that
movie?
time again.
It's time to get
I don't know what
Saturday
movie that was.
NordVPN.
Hey, yo, hey, chill
Or
out.
at least
Hey,
it's
wait.
time for geo-locked content.
Alright. You got me. I couldn't have seen that coming. I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was a random niche thing in the video. A joke that he had.
Whatever
I've never
you're
seen
talking
your
about,
channel
you can
before,
join
but
us
I don't
and
know
watch
what
a
kind of
real-life
running
tale
jokes
of
you
survival.
have. I've
Wait,
never seen it.
Fly.
good deal. Giant discount. Nordy's also
Alright.
offering a 30-day money-back guarantee to sweeten the
Yeah, I
deal.
know.
Okay, geez, turn
I
it
bet.
on already. Bro, if you finish the
Okay.
Lordy Fly Boys or whatever you're talking about, you can join us and watch a real-life tale of survival.
Wait,
Real
wait,
life?
Gorilla,
What do you mean
I
real
don't
life?
think that this movie is real.
Mono jumped out of the boat and furiously swam to shore. When he got there, he said that the whole island was twisting around. But it wasn't the island. It was the dehydration and
Yep.
starvation. When he managed to catch his breath, he called out to the rest of the boys on the boat to come to shore. Back together, the boys took a moment to say another prayer. They were alive, marooned, but alive.
Hey.
For now. They then
Hey.
fell asleep and didn't wake up
Right
until
on the
next
shore, bro?
morning. The first priority was to find their bearings.
That's crazy.
Climbing up to the
Right
top
on the
of
shore is
craggy peak
crazy.
of the island, Mano stepped on a piece of soaking wet wood, which
You don't know
provided
what
him
coulda
with
gone
the
down
first
there,
real
bro.
drink of water he'd had in 8 days. About
That's lit,
halfway
though.
up the island, they found makeshift knives from the island's last inhabitants. Arriving at the summit,
cold.
they looked down
Yo,
at
that's
the
so
cliffs around
clean.
them and were filled with hope. It would
They're
be
having an
hard,
actual
but
adventure,
they
bro.
could survive. They tried to make a fire.
This
but
could
without
low-key be a
food or
spin-off
water,
One
they
Piece
were too
episode.
weak to get it going. In those first days on the island, they survived by cutting off the tops of coconuts with stone knives in order to drink the milk inside. They harvested papaya as well. They also constructed
That'll do it.
spears, which they used to hunt fish in the shallows, and caught seabirds
They were out
with
there
their bare
chilling.
hands, who had made their nests among the crags of the island's cliff sides. At first, there was no rain, so the boys managed to hydrate by drinking the blood of the birds that they caught.
The blood of
And
the birds?
since they didn't have a
No.
fire, they were eating raw or nothing. Not only that, upon further
Alright, they were
investigation
kinda
of
struggling.
the summit,
They were cooking when they were eating the coconuts and the papaya, but why are we drinking bird blood, bro? Y'all don't know what's in that bird blood, bro. Y'all could actually be drinking some kind of crazy disease. Like you got better options before you start drinking bird blood. Like, come on, man.
the boys found an ancient volcanic crater where their people had lived before the kidnapping thing. It was like their ancestors had left them gifts. They found wild taro, bananas, and wild
taro?
chickens, which had been
Yo, they had
reproducing on the
taro?
island without human intervention since it was abandoned.
That's
3
lit.
months into their stay, Fateh managed to generate enough friction to catch a spark and
All
start a
right.
fire. Their first hot meal in months must have tasted better than
They had
anything I
taro.
could
That's so
imagine.
lit.
The boys' main
That had to
priority
be a
going
boon, bro.
forward was to keep
I love
that
taro.
fire going. But they also
Taro
needed
anything,
shelter.
bro.
Mano began weaving coconut fronds to wall their house. It took him 2 weeks to finish. Their
Yo.
home was an A-frame
Hey, he did it,
lean-to
though.
nestled in among the
Okay,
trees.
they actually do
with
have
a
the
small
survival
twig
skills,
palisade
okay.
to keep out the wind.
They weren't
They
just
made
capping.
a fireplace in the middle and used
They were
banana
just
leaves
bugging when it came to actually going somewhere. When they got somewhere, they were actually hooping.
for bedding. Now, with shelter and fire taken care of, it was time to get the rest of the island in order. Mano said that they all worked together as though they'd been on the island for a long time. So they split up into teams of 2 and drew up a schedule for garden, kitchen, and guard duties. They also had a strict system of managing the fire so it wouldn't go out. In Sione's
What's that?
words, we knew if we got lazy, the island would beat us. One of the boys, Kolo, even managed to build a guitar from a piece of driftwood, half a coconut shell, and steel
That's
wires
lit.
they salvaged from the shipwreck.
That's lit.
Each of their days started and ended with a song and a short prayer.
They were out there singing shanties. Binks's brew. Yo. They say yo ho 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 yo ho ho
Mono said that he never really
yo,
loved the
ho,
island. I
yo,
always wanted to go back
ho.
home to see my family. A month after finally
Valid.
constructing a fire, they tried to build a raft. They managed to chop down some trees with makeshift knives.
The fact
and
that they
used their
survived this
fire
long
to
is
cut up the limbs.
amazing.
Unfortunately, the raft
A lot of people
never
would've
managed
clapped
to
out
get
by
too
now.
far out to sea. It just lazily drifted down the beach.
Like, they've been here months.
With all hope of escape dashed upon the rocks and bluffs of Ata, the kids settled in for long-haul survival. They built a more permanent garden, cultivating any fruits or vegetables they found on the
Wow.
island. Sione also recalled
Whoa.
his father's traditional teachings of how to acquire water. He cut into trees across the island, and over the
Whoa.
course of 4 days of cutting deeper and deeper, eventually water came seeping out of the trunks. The boys also built a gym with weights for lifting, a badminton court which used bird feathers
Yo,
for
they were
shuttlecocks,
actually chilling,
and even
bro.
a pen for a chicken coop. They did
They were
all
chilling.
of this using a small makeshift knife, a lot of resolve,
They were
and a
chilling,
ton of
bro.
time. Sione said, we were often unhappy, and at
I bet.
times we argued. But
I
then
bet.
we would walk away from our friends into the jungle. Sometimes we would cry a little. They would
That's
talk
valid,
out their
that's valid,
issues
yeah.
over the firelight in the evenings. If anybody had something they didn't like, they talked about it, and we said sorry, and then pray, and everything's okay. But if someone got really mad, like if I planned something and they didn't do it, you disappear for a few hours, look at the ocean, and clear it out of your mind. But then, disaster struck. Mano and Steven had left for the cliffs to gather seabirds for dinner. They hoped to be able to each eat 2 birds a day. Mano had caught a couple, but Steven was unsatisfied. He went further down the cliffs where they could find more nests.
Don't
But
tell me he
slipped,
fell.
falling 40 feet down the bluffs and breaking his
Ah.
leg. Mano ran to the rest of the boys, and
No.
they found him on a slim outcropping and managed to
then
carry
he
him
didn't
back
die.
up to the summit. They set his
Dang,
leg
bro.
and joked, "Don't worry, we'll do your work while you lie there like King Taufa Ahau Tupo himself." King
Oh,
Taufa
no.
Ahau was the king of the Tongans at the time. Stephen would get the royal treatment for the following 4 months while he healed. It's very lucky
It
that he
only
had
took him 4
support
months.
because an injury like that is a
Yeah.
death sentence for
Yo, they
anyone
were bros,
surviving
bro.
alone.
They were
Then,
actually
one
bros. If
day,
they weren't competent enough, they would have probably eaten them or something. Or like, yo, if they weren't competent with survival on their own as a group, and that they could actually do the work to like support their community while supporting him, they would have probably eaten him. Or like just considered him a loss at that point if they were just like at their wits end, just struggling. And like, he's got some real ones with him. He's lucky. Very fortunate man.
after 15 months of tracking time by scratching tally marks into stone, watching the dry season turn wet and back to dry again, it happened. From up at the top of the island, the lookout screeched, "Boat coming!"
Oh,
Captain Peter
time.
Warner was the youngest son of business magnate Arthur Warner. His company, Electronic Industries, was the largest manufacturer of radios in 1930s Australia. The family was
is this Australia?
exceedingly wealthy, and like many other sons of wealthy families, Peter was always intended to become part of the business. But like 6 other young men with the prospect of long lives ahead of them, he wanted to rebel. So at the young age of 17, he split in search of overseas adventure. He spent the next years of his life sailing
this
everywhere
was in
from
Australia.
Hong Kong to St. Petersburg. And when he finally returned, like the prodigal son he was,
So they're
he brought
indigenous.
his
Isn't it
father
Indigenous
his
Day?
Swedish captain's license,
National Indigenous
hoping
Peoples
for some
Day?
of Daddy's approval. But Daddy was unimpressed.
W video
Peter's
for
old
today.
man was insisted that he take a job at one of their companies. So Peter asked, "What's easiest?" His father told him accounting. But accounting was not only difficult, to Peter, it was also boring as heck. The sea still called to Peter, and whenever he had the chance
That
to,
boy's a
he
pirate at
sailed
heart.
off to Tasmania, where he moored his own fishing fleet. It was on one of these trips on his boat, the Just David, that brought him to the island of Ata. Peter, in an interview, said that he and his crew were experimenting with some fishing gear 5 or 6 miles off the island of Ata, which we thought was uninhabited for 60 to
Whoa.
70 years, when they noticed
Probably
a
was
black
before they
patch
came.
against the green background on the hills, which was interesting because that suggested something was
There was
burning.
fire.
Peter
Yep.
thought, that's strange that a fire should start in the tropics on an uninhabited island.
That
Peter
is
and his
strange.
crew
That's a good.
investigated
That's some
closer,
good
and the
intuition.
lookout on the mast shouted down to them that he could hear
Intuition.
human voices.
I didn't believe it was a human voice.
That's
I
him.
said, "Oh, that's the birds. You're crazy."
But they continued ever closer. Peter kept his eye out for movement when suddenly a small brown figure leapt down the rocks and into the water before them. Peter was initially worried that the island could be a prison camp or some kind of dumping ground for dangerous criminals. So he loaded his rifle and signaled to his crew to do the same. He watched
Chill out,
as
bro.
this young man saddled up to his boat and said, in clear English, "My name is Stephen. I am one of the 6 castaways. We think we have been here for 1.5 years.
Ah.
Peter thought to himself that he better let the boys aboard. So he set out the ladder, and 6 naked youths clambered onto the deck of the Just
They were
David.
naked?
Peter remarked that they looked
guess they wouldn't have
completely
clothes.
wild.
That makes
They hadn't
sense.
had a haircut for a long time. When they told Peter their story, he was skeptical. So he wrote their names
Why does he look
down
like
before
Fry,
calling
bro?
the operator at Nuku'alofa, the capital of Tonga, asking, "Would you mind calling up St. Andrew's College?" 20 minutes later, the operator called back in tears and said, "It's true. These boys have been given up for dead. Funerals have been
Yo.
held, and now
Yo.
you've found them." The boys were
That's
rescued
goated.
on
Their families
Sunday,
must be so
September
happy.
11th, 1966. A
Oh, this is
full 15
1960s.
months since they left their home island of Ha'afeva to embark on that ill-fated journey to Fiji. Their story wasn't over yet, however.
Yo.
Once they arrived
Their survival story. Wait, hold on. Let
in
me,
Nuku'alofa,
let me
they
not
were
speak
checked
too-
over by
too
a
soon.
local doctor who expressed admiration of their handling of Stephen's broken leg. But once
Yeah,
they
they
had been
did
looked
well,
over,
bro.
they were immediately arrested.
Alright,
Mr.
that's stupid.
Tanyela Uhila, the man whose boat they hijacked, was pressing charges
Oh,
against
they
them
stole
for
his-
vehicle theft.
This guy, bro. This guy. Please don't tell me that enough time passed from the time in which they were not able to be held liable for these charges so that when they came back, they were actually old enough to be held liable for these charges. That's going to make me so upset, bro. Like, you're telling me people were pronouncing y'all dead? Y'all had to survive by the skin of your teeth for a whole 1.5 years? and then you get back, and the first thing you get hit with is a lawsuit, and you get arrested, bro. Come on, man. That's tough.
15 months may have
That's
passed since
tough,
the
bro.
6 truants hijacked his sailboat,
I didn't know they
but he
stole a
wasn't
boat,
ready
though.
to
Maybe
let
I
it
just
go.
wasn't paying
In a
attention.
stroke of luck, Peter realized he could save the boys once more. He figured that their
Is
story
he gonna
was
pay for it?
perfect Hollywood material, a la
Of course.
Castaway. And since he was an accountant for his father's company, he had the ability to manage their film rights. He was also fortunate enough to have connections in the Aussie film industry. From Tonga, he called up the manager of Channel 7 in Sydney, telling them they could have the Australian rights if they gave him the international rights. Peter then paid Mr. Ahila £150, which after inflation comes to around £2,800 today,
crazy.
the equivalent of $3,800 American dollars, to pay for the boat the kids
That's
had
cool.
stolen. The boys
Give
were
him a
then
nice
to be
little check.
released if they agreed to cooperate with the film. A few days later, a team from Channel 7 arrived, and they embarked all the way back to Ata to make the movie. 3 journalists dressed in pointy shoes
That's
and
lit.
crisp suits sat on the deck of a chartered boat, gazing
This
up
is
at
a
the
lit
tall
story,
rocks of
bro.
Ata, and admitted they didn't know how to swim. Lucky for
Oh,
them,
that's crazy.
Peter said, "These boys will save you."
That's why they're wearing
Once
the
the
suits,
6
bro.
had been released from jail, they were welcomed in a flurry of celebration. A feast was set out for them by their families.
I bet.
Then another was set out by the church. Then a third, with almost the entire
come
population of
back eating,
Ha'aveva
boy.
turning up to the party, was held on behalf
But
of
wait, population of what?
the entire population of Ha'aveva turning up
Oh,
to the party
Ha'aveva.
was held
That's
on
the name of
behalf
where they're
of the
from.
entire island. Peter himself was announced as a
that
national
Maori?
hero. He even received a communique from King Taufa Ahautupo IV, inviting him for an audience with the monarch. The king said, "Thank you for rescuing 6 of my subjects. Now, is there anything I can do for you?" But Peter only humbly asked for rights to trap lobster in Tongan waters. Peter
Trap
then returned
lobster.
to Sydney, but not before he offered
Oh.
trap lobster in
Rights to
Tongan
trap
waters.
lobster,
Peter
okay.
then returned to Sydney, but not before he offered the boys a chance to see the world. He resigned from his father's company, commissioned a new
Wow.
ship, and hired the boys as its crew.
Wow, that is such a cool
And-
story.
Right? Not quite.
Hold
While
on.
Peter and the
All right,
boys
before this has a chance to turn bad, let me just say, as of right now in the story, these boys have handled this situation far better than the 100, and I'll stand on that. It may be because they had less people to deal with overall, which is a good point, right? You got less people to worry about, less people to feed, less like stuff that you need to accumulate, but there's also less manpower, right? So to a degree, it kind of evens out, but still, right? All they had in a year and a half, and they didn't have grounders to deal with, so yeah, different challenges, right? But all they had, and it wasn't irradiated, right? It was just regular Earth, so different challenges. But let me just make this point real quick. Year and a half, right? Worst thing they had was a broken leg. That's it. Nobody died. Nobody got seriously injured. Just a broken leg, and he healed from it before they even went back. That's a W in my book. That's a big W. What do y'all think? Let me know down in the comments. But we're gonna continue now before it has a chance to get bad. W filmmaking though. I kind of want to see that movie.
returned to Tonga to cheers and jubilation, Dutch historian and author Rutger Bregman, whose book Humankind broke the story to a Western audience, was welcome to more mixed reviews. Bregman was looking for uplifting stories to prove that humanity was inherently good. So, he used the tale of the boys' survival as a foil to William Golding's novel, Lord of the Flies. For those of you who haven't had the chance to read it, long story short, TLDR, a bunch of English schoolboys crash land on a deserted island. They initially try to maintain order using rules, famously declaring whoever holds a specific conch shell would be the one allowed to speak. But these rules are quickly thrown away by a would-be authoritarian dictator, Jack, who organizes a militant cabal of boys obsessed with hunting a pig, who eventually go on to murder 2 other boys in cold blood. The main critique of Bregman's story was that it was told through a colonial lens. Prominent
That's what I was gonna say. Maybe it was the culture, right? Because I'm like, yo, these Maori guys, or not, they're not even Maori, but wherever they're from, right? Their culture clearly taught them that, like, for their survival, it was better to have cooperation and like equality than to have some kind of strict hierarchy. But in the Lord of the Flies thing, they specifically said English. And we know what happened throughout most of history when it comes to people who are operating under English culture. So I can't say I'm exactly surprised that this was used as a foil to this. Now, this isn't meant to be with any prejudice. This is just me stating facts are facts, right? Like, the people that have been known for, like, doing the most, like colonizing and things like that, they've mostly been coming out of Europe. I'm not gonna lie to you. So, like, the culture, it's very, like, deep within the culture, or it has been in the past. I won't say it is now, but it definitely has been in the past. So I can see why that's being used as a foil here, because, like, it's probably just because of the cultural differences. Like, you send six, I guess, like, at this point in time, you send six European people over there. Maybe there's going to be some beef about who's in charge, who's gotten the most power, who this and this and that, right? But you send six of these men who were raised in a different culture. Maybe you don't see that. I'm just naming what I see.
Tongan storyteller Malaika Gisa Fatafehi said, "It was bizarre to see a story I've..."
And you can't take that and then put it on the entire humanity, though. You can't use that to prove that all of humanity is inherently good or all of humanity is inherently bad. That's just bad precedent. Different parts of humanity have different modus operandi. It was bizarre to see a story I've been told. Wait, it was bizarre to see a story I've been told differently, and told in a way that I didn't even prioritize the story of the men. What does that mean?
Been told differently, and told in a way that didn't even prioritize the story of the men. The critique is not without merit, as Golding's story was intended to speak to Europeans in the aftermath of the Second World War. Comparing the story of those Tongan lads to Golding's English schoolboys ignores that he was writing about the rise of fascism. Fascism being a form of ultra-nationalist authoritarian governance that is known by violent suppression of anyone who disagrees, strict control over society, and dictatorial power. Not to mention, comparing the two ignores the Tongan boys' indigenous upbringing as well. In short, fascism is for power-hungry losers who hate immigrants, and indigenous communities have different upbringings than those raised in colonial nations. The issue of
that
who
was
owns
just
their story is also...
That was the same point that I made just now. But what is... Okay, that was the same point I just made.
Colonial nations like the UK, Spain, France, and Portugal filled their coffers by extracting resources from indigenous peoples in North America and beyond. Those same nations then made stories like Pocahontas and The Last of the Mohicans, which claimed to tell indigenous stories, but didn't actually include indigenous people in their production, leading to stories that were overtly biased or benignly misleading. That being said, Sione has also said, some people are blaming Mr. Warner because he is making money off of us. To those people, I say, shut up and forget about it. He is the one who rescued us. If he didn't do that, there is no way for us to come out from the island. Does the act of...
I'm not gonna lie, he did save them, but he did kind of have an agenda after the fact. Now, I can't even speak to, like, just based on the story, how it's being told right now, it seemed as though first rescuing them was the priority, and then after it became apparent that he could, like, then make money off of them, he decided to exploit that. Now, that's not to speak to this man's morality one way or the other, but at least in this example, it seems like his priorities were to save them first, and then he discovered the idea of utilizing them. That's just how it looks like.
Didn't do that, there is no way for us to come out from the island. Does the act of saving the boys give Peter Warner the right to sell their story? Can the film rights be seen as the reward?
I think it was part of their agreement. I feel like it was part of their agreement because, like, they did commit a crime to go out there, and he kind of, like, absolved their crime in exchange for the rights to sell their story. So that... it was kind of an agreement. Whether or not you can say it is his right to sell their story is one thing. If he just came out the blue and then just went to the movie theater and hired different actors after hearing their story and then just made the movie on his own, that's a completely different story than, like, him saying, hey, I'm going to exonerate y'all from this crime. I'll pay you guys his debts, and in exchange, I want you to be in this movie and let me tell this story. That's a completely different situation. That's a lot more fair than the aforementioned one.
For their rescue. Does the fact that he sold the rights to get the money to pay their bail change how this is interpreted? One thing is for sure. If Peter hadn't heard the call to adventure, like those boys heard the day they set sail, he might never have passed by Ata in his life. And if he hadn't been hanging around the ocean that day, those boys might never have been able to escape their craggy fate on that rock in the middle of the Pacific.
Maybe they would have just lived there happily. Who knows? But regardless, that was a great video. I enjoyed it. I'm happy to have watched that video today. If you guys are happy about that too, go ahead and leave a like, comment, let me know how you felt about that, because I enjoyed it. And subscribe to the channel. And you know what? Because I enjoyed that video by Young Brew, I'm going to go ahead and drop a sub. We're going to do it. We might watch some more videos later. Let's check out his channel. What does he have? But for now, hold on, maybe, let's see. Before I hop off yet, can we pull up his channel, see what other kind of videos he had? As a little preview, just a little teaser, you know what I'm saying? 2.31 million subscribers. Big dubs. Big dubs. Reddit mass murderers. Okay, we've got cool stuff. I like this. Solving mysteries. Good. We don't have a mystery channel here. We don't have a mystery channel in the lineup. So, Brew, welcome to the lineup, bro. Welcome to the squad. I enjoy your videos. Thank you. And with that being said, I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. Bye.